Hi, I thought I'd talk real quickly about Inkpads and Inkpad Storage today. All my Inkpads are behind me on the wall in this plastic storage unit from Home Depot, I think. It's designed to hold hardware and the drawers tilt open and closed, but obviously the way I'm using it, the drawers are never going to close again. I have all my inks racked by manufacturers. So I have a bunch of Ancient Page, which is dye ink. I was big on it for a while. The pads are a little wet when you first open them, and it takes a long time for them to sort of dry out and act normally. I'm not sure whether the problem is the product is too wet or I'm too stupid to use it properly, but there you have it. I have a bunch of Memories dye inks, which I really like, mostly in pale colors, but then I have black and 2 colors of brown because a lot of my stamping is just plain old, outline stamping. I didn't do a lot of detail work. My favorite inks right now are these Amico metal inks. I know that they're promoting these inks for stamping on metal, but I've found them to be great on all sorts of surfaces. And a couple of the girls in my mixed media group commented on the fact that my stamping was so sharp and detailed, and I'm chalking it up to the great ink from the folks at Amico. So thanks to them for coming up with the great ink. And then I have Distress inks, probably, well, pretty close to the full set of colors. I bought these probably when they first came out, and they sat around my workroom for about a year because I didn't know what to do with them. I just never really got good detail from the stamping, and I thought, wow, what a terrible product. And then I realized that they're called distress inks because you're not supposed to stamp with them, you're supposed to distress with them. So I'm working on an article on how I use distress inks, and it has nothing to do with stamping and everything to do with aging and toning and distressing. So now that I know how to use them, I have almost the full set of colors, and I really like them a lot. And then I have, your basic black in Stays On and Versamark and Crafters ink pads. Just because every once in a while I do need to do some stamping on glass or on fabric, and black usually gets me through. I have an embossing pad, and it is no longer filled with the standard embossing ink. It's been refreshed with a mixture of water and Cornhuskers lotion, which is almost 100% glycerin, which is basically what embossing ink is. And then I have a Castaway pad, and I've already done an article about that. I pretty much hate it a lot. And I have one lone pigment ink pad. I used to have a full set of pigment inks, and I really never used it, and they all dried out, and I haven't replaced them, and I'm not planning to. So you'll notice that everything is stored upside down, and that's because both the dye and the water-based inks tend to settle a little bit. So if you store them right side up, everything settles to the bottom of the pad, and you're stamping on the surface of the pad. You're not getting the maximum amount of ink onto your stamp. So storing them upside down like this keeps the surface wet, and I think makes for a better stamp. The other thing you'll see is that all of these pads are labeled with the color names on the end, oriented so that they can be stored upside down. And I thought this was just me idiot-proofing my workroom, but when the girls came over a while back, they all commented on how smart it was that I had labeled my pads on the end. I hate fumbling around with supplies, so labeling them like that and storing them like this makes it easy for me to grab the pad that I need quickly and get on with making stuff. And then on top I have embossing powders in every possible color of the rainbow, and to be really honest with you, I could pretty much do without every color of embossing powder that I have except for silver, gold, copper, and black. Everything else is just, I don't know, it sits around for years and years and I never really use it. And I also have on the end down here some UT ultra thick embossing enamel. I really sort of fumble around with UT. I have it in clear and in silver, and I really have to work at it to get a good result out of it, and that's just me being impatient. I think that UT takes a little bit of patience to use. So that's what I know about ink pads and inks and embossing powders. I hope it helped.